lives where we got to be involved in the winter sports club. It's pretty much was the highlight of my life thus far, like growing up in Steamboat. That's why I live here now, because I just wanted to come be a boy again, and am successfully doing that. Really, my first memory down at Howson Hill is I remember we got a school field trip in kindergarten, and we got to walk down to Howson Hill and watch the Nordic Combined World Cup. And I really this is kind of one of my earlier memories of my life. I don't know if I remember anything before that day, but that was the coolest thing that I ever saw. I had never seen anyone from a different country before, which I remember thinking was really cool. There were people from all over the world in our little town ski jumping. And the athletes from the United States that we were watching were all from Steamboat. And I remember this little light clicked in my head, and I thought, I want to go do that. And it helped that all of my friends did it at the time. So my parents signed me up that year for Nordic Combined, or maybe it was the next year. But I definitely remember going home and, after seeing Todd Lodwick out there competing and saying, this is what I want to do, sign me up for that. So I got put into Little Vikings and immediately went to that program and was just obsessed with it. And the story I want to tell you is, many of you know about Wednesday Night Jump. And on Wednesday nights, it's our little town World Cup for ski jumping. And it really felt that big at the time to me. It was the biggest thing in the world. And at that time, I liked to sometimes pretend I was sick so that I could go home from school. I was 5, 6, 7 years old. And sometimes I would just get sick of school and I'm like, I'm sick. I'm gonna go home and hang out with my mom. And I remember one day pretending I was sick, and my mom came and picked me up. And I was pretty psyched, and she's driving me home, and she looks over at me, and she says, you know that if you come home from school, you can't do Wednesday Night Jump tonight. And I remember thinking so hard about that and realizing I have to go back to school. And so she had picked me up, driven me halfway home, and I said, no, you should take me back. And so she drove me back to the school. I finished the day, yes, just for Wednesday Night Jump. And so the thing about Wednesday Night Jump was that it was like a pizza party. And so I would show up, eat some pizza, and drink like a liter of Pepsi. And then you go out and you would just ski jump. And you take as many jumps as you could until the competition started. And after you drink a liter of Pepsi, like 45 minutes later, you have to go to the bathroom. And so I was sitting up on the ski jump, and the lodge is like 5 minutes away. And you might run into some kids you might have to get a cookie. Like, it could be, to go back to the lodge is like a 30-minute ordeal. It could take a long time. And I was all about efficiency. Like, really my thing was, I need to get as many jumps as I can in this time period. And so I figured out this amazing strategy. And so what I would do is I would just pee in my ski jumping suit. And it was perfect because I don't know any of you, many of you know what a ski jumping suit is. It's like a big adult diaper. That's really what it is. And so I had it totally figured out. And it is perfect too because Howson Hill is like the coldest place on earth. And so right when I'm getting cold, just peeing in the jumpsuit and getting probably 4 more jumps than any other kid out there. And so that pretty much goes on for a whole year because the jumpsuits don't go home. You just hang them. You just hang them up in the locker room. which is why the locker room smells like it does. So that whole season, like, had a really good thing going. And at the end of the year, Todd tells the parents, please just wash the jumpsuits. You know, they're communal, you just rent them for the year. And so I took the jumpsuit home, and my mom was like horrified. She's like, you've been peeing in this thing all season long? And we just washed it, gave it back, went to the next kid the next year. Just the circle of life there. Yeah. It's still down there. It was the cow suit. Yeah. So I stopped doing that eventually. But my obsession with ski jumping remained. Like any way I could get more jumps than anybody else, I was just obsessed with it. I don't really have any like early memories of cross-country skiing. It pretty much was just the other sport that Todd made me do, but I was just there to ski jump. And that really stayed that way forever. And, you know, went to the Winter Sports Club, and I actually, last year, Carl Denny sent me a photo of, they found my goal sheet at Howelson from when I was 11 years old. And they sent me a photo of it, and my long-term goal was to go to the Olympics. And I wrote that on a piece of paper when I was 11 years old, which is crazy. And I probably wanted to do it before then, but that was the first time I had been given the opportunity to write it on paper. And what a cool thing, like being 11 years old and getting the opportunity to write down what your goals are on paper. Like, I don't remember them ever doing that in school. No, really, like that, I think that's like the power of the Winter Sports Club, is that I had this whole avenue where they said, like, what do you want to do with this? Like, where do you want to take this? And how can we help you? And they let you write ridiculous things on that paper, like go to the Olympics. And like no one questioned it. And they said, like, how can we help you get there? And so I just fell in love with that culture. Like, that was my thing. I just like couldn't wait to get down to Howelson. That was my whole childhood. And so I followed the program all the way through. And someone mentioned the logo on the jacket earlier. I think that was like my next huge goal. I was like, I want to be on the US ski team, but really I just wanted the jacket. That was like the thing. I was like, that's gonna get me girls. It does. Like, yeah. Totally. And so that was like my huge goal. And I remember I took a year off after high school to train with the Winter Sports Club and try to make the US ski team. That was like my huge goal. And I had this awesome season, qualified, did everything on paper to qualify for the US ski team. And I remember flying home from Europe in March after like just a great season and being so pumped I was gonna get the jacket, And I was figuring out, what girl am I gonna text, and let her know. And I remember getting told they cut Nordic Combined from the US ski team. I woke up one day and got a text message and started to hear people talk about it. The US ski team decided to cut Nordic Combined. And that was like a crazy moment in my life because I had this thing in mind for so long. And like it didn't really matter, but it seemed like important at the time. And I remember calling the coach, Dave Jarrett, who was the Nordic Combined head coach, and he's like, you can move to Park City and like come hang out with us. I don't know what we're gonna, I don't know how this is gonna work. We have to find money and figure out all the logistics, but you can come here, which was like very different than the phone call I thought I was gonna get, and the jackets in the mail. And so And so I moved to Park City. I was like, I don't know what else I'm gonna do. So I moved to Park City and we figured it out, right? And it wasn't that big of a deal. We made our own jackets. They weren't as cool, but And I think that was like such an important moment for me in my life. You know, I think we put these things on a pedestal, right? These titles and these, but at the end of the day, like nothing changed. I still had the opportunity and I could still follow through with it, and we just got creative. And so the next 6 years of my life, I lived in Park City, like full-time skier, washing dishes on the side. And it was an amazing time in my life where I was just so singularly focused on this goal, still of going to the Olympics. And like all the highs and lows, all of them, you know, almost quit multiple times, enrolled in college multiple times, then bailed. And I remember getting to this point where I started to figure it out. And, you know, there were days where I would wake up and it just seemed like this dream I had was so far away, like it was just so distant. And then there started to be days where it was like, holy shit, I think I'm gonna do this thing. And that time in my life, I think it was like 2017, was so special. And I remember that season where basically, like, I had become one of the best ski jumpers in the world somehow. Like, it was crazy. And I remember being in Chenauve, France, and kind of like, my whole thing was I was very focused, but like when it came to especially like ski jumping, it's like golf. You need to not care. That's like the whole thing. If you try, you're screwed. And so, like, we worked with sports psychologists, and I had figured out this whole like mindset. Like, I just didn't care, and it was gold. And so I was like really figuring this whole thing out, and I'd be at the venue, they'd have like a little athlete hut, and they'd always have all this food in there. And like when you're a ski jumper, like the whole thing is, the more you weigh, the harder it is to fly far. And so you're surrounded by like all these people that are super careful about food. And so my whole thing was like, I'd go in the athlete, and I remember at this venue, they had the best pizza. And this kind of comes back to Wednesday Night Jump. It's like the pizza and then the ski jumping, right? And I just remember like going in and eating like 2 slices of pizza, and all the other athletes are looking at me like, he's eating pizza before he's ski jumping? We're at the World Cup? And
no Pepsi?
No Pepsi. They didn't have Pepsi, unfortunately. And that day I jumped to 2nd place in the World Cup. And it was like the most fun thing ever. And then immediately got passed by 30 people in the cross-country ski race, which leads me back to the cross-country thing, not my favorite. And it was actually so bad because I remember like there was always a huge crowd at this venue. And I just skied from 2nd place to 32nd place. And this French woman came up to me after the race, and she just looked at me and she said, "I'm so sorry." And I remember thinking like, man, that must have been so bad. But anyways, I got on this hot streak, and I had this super fun season of like just jumping to the front of World Cups and like figuring it out. And it was awesome. And this is the year before the Olympics. So I'm like, sweet, like I'm like on track. I think I was the 2nd best Nordic Combined skier in the US. We got 4 spots on the Olympic team. Like I kind of put myself in this spot. And so going into 2018, I was super confident. I was really excited. And I was also super nervous because the last time that the Olympics had come through, I was like 18 years old. And like if I made it, it would have been huge, and there was no pressure. And so all of a sudden there was all this pressure, and there's like this thing that I've been wanting to do my whole life. And if I don't do it this year, I'm gonna have to wait 4 more years to do it. And I don't know if I can do that. And so that season, 2018, was so interesting because I don't think I really realized like the wheels were spinning until it was too late. But essentially like I lost my mojo completely. And you know, this lead into the season didn't go as well as promised or as I expected, but I remember I got to start on the World Cup to start the season, so I thought, okay, this is great. I'm still in this great spot, and I just had like a totally different season, like just not even jumping well, skiing further back, and it was super hard. And I'm looking like the time, it seems like you have all this time, and then it just starts to disappear and disappear. And I remember being home for Christmas after like the first period of competitions, and you know, we basically had like 4 weeks left until they decided the Olympic team. And I was like 7th on the team we had 5 spots, and I was in 7th. And I just remember thinking like, how did I get here? And like, I need to reboot because I have 4 weeks left, or else this is like gone. And I went back, I actually got kicked off the World Cup and was like on the B circuit. And I traveled around and started to like get confidence back on that circuit. And I moved myself up to the 5th spot. And there was one more weekend left. But the problem was they also announced at the same time that we lost our 5th spot. So now there's not 5 spots, now there's 4 spots, and I'm 5th. And so I got brought back to the World Cup for like one more last ditch effort. And it was in Chenauve, France, same venue as the year before, like jumped to 2nd place in the World Cup, kind of my place, and go eat some pizza and ski jump. And I showed up in Chenauve, and I didn't get any. I flew from Finland to France. None of my bags came. I borrowed like pretty much every piece of equipment for this competition. So like I was on someone else's skis, someone else's boots. Like we just paired it all together. But I just remember thinking like, this is the story. Like this is going to be so cool. I'm just gonna crush it like on other people's gear, and that's gonna be the story. It's gonna be awesome. And so like it didn't slow me down at all. And the weekend came, and it was just like a disaster. Like didn't jump well, didn't ski well, and basically the weekend ended. It was like, it's over, totally done. Fifth guy, 4 spots. And so the next day we drove from France back to Seefeld, Austria, a super long drive. And I'm just in the back of the van. I'm like the 3rd wheel to the Olympic team because it's me and the 4 guys that are going. And I'm just sitting in the back of the van like, I can't believe it. Like I'm just kind of like lost. It was such a crazy time. And like I had heartbreak before, but this was like on this whole nother level that I never expected to have. And it was really amazing. And like, so we were in Seefeld for 3 days training before basically the Olympic team went off to do their thing, and I figured out what was next for me. And I remember I was at the hotel room. I was talking to my now wife Brenna on the phone, like FaceTiming her, like catastrophizing, right? Like, what do I do now? Like this was the whole point, and now it's over. And I'm talking to her in the lobby, and my coach comes down and says, "Hey, we're having a team meeting upstairs." And so I go upstairs. We're in this hotel room, and our executive director Bill DeMong is walking us through logistics and what's happening next. And like halfway through the meeting, and I'm sitting in the back of the room, he just pulls this bib out from behind his back, and he says, "By the way, Ben, you're going to the Olympics." And he just throws this bib at me. And I'm sitting in the corner of the room, and I'm so confused. And basically, I forget what the story was. Some Russian got busted for doping, and we got an extra Olympic spot. And we've got 5 spots now. I'm the 5th guy. All of a sudden, I go from pretty much like the lowest of lows to then being told, no, actually, like I felt like Ashton Kutcher was gonna come out and like this whole, you just got punked. It was crazy. And so I ended up competing in the Olympics. And the other thing is when I showed up at the games, you know, I kind of thought like, awesome, this is so, like, I needed to do this, like check this off the list. Otherwise, like I'm deciding on 4 more years of trying to go after this dream, and it's a hard dream. And I get there and there's all this talk, like the discussion in the village is, well, if you go to the Olympics, but you don't compete, were you really an Olympian? And so we have 4 spots, 5 guys. So like, I'm like, oh my God, it never ends. So 4 guys get to compete, we have 5 spots. And I'm like, I have to compete. Like I have to get on. And it was kind of amazing, like the second that the pressure lifted and I'm there, like I got my mojo back. And the training jumps just started going super well, and I started having fun ski jumping again, and it was kind of like back to being a kid, just like Wednesday night jump, just getting as many jumps as you can and smiling, and I ended up getting to compete in 2 out of the 3 events, and it was just an incredible experience. And I actually, I competed in the large hill event, and at the time, I was winning the Olympics for 3 minutes, I remember, right? And I tell people that it was probably 3 to 5 minutes that I was winning the Olympics. And it sucked because we have like equipment control, so like random, like they'll just pick you randomly and basically make sure your suit's not too big. And so I got pulled into equipment control, and by the time I got out, I wasn't winning the Olympics anymore. And I was so bummed because I just wanted to like sit in the leader's chair, but it was 3 to 5 minutes. I just want everyone to know that. But yeah, like none of that possible without the Winter Sports Club. The greatest, greatest childhood ever. I tell people, just getting to, learn your limits and set goals and compete and learn hard lessons and learn how to be on a team, and these things that like I always thought the reason I was doing it was to accomplish these goals I had set for myself, but then like now every day I get to see like the real reason why I did all this. Like those lessons I learned pay off every day of my life, and they always will. And I think that's like the whole goal. Like it's not about sending athletes to the Olympics, it's about teaching life lessons through sport. And I'm just so grateful for that. And when I moved back to town 4 years ago, I wanted to coach down the Winter Sports Club. And the craziest thing to me was going down there and realizing like that experience hasn't changed at all. And I don't know, there's something so fascinating about this. Like, it's like 20, 25 years later, these kids are getting to have the exact same experience that I had and that I hold like so dear. And I don't know, like there's not that many things like that in this world that stay so pure, and yeah, I'm all for it.